Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft Podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me in the booth we have another special guest. We have our man from Tokyo, Rich Freeman. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. The rubber's starting to hit the road a little bit. We're only 2 weekends away from the start of Super Rugby, so everyone's trying to glean every last bit of information out of teams and setups and everything. So from all of us and from managers, I've appreciated taking your time to pore over the Sunwolves.
No problems at all.
Excellent. As I said, it's our first podcast that we're going to go around the camps and have a look at South African teams, New Zealand teams and Australian teams as well. We're going to get Brendan Nallon from South Africa to have a review of the South African teams. We're going to get the Green and Gold Rugby chaps on to talk through the Australian teams. And we're going to line up something for the New Zealand teams as well. We're just working on that one. But in this podcast, as I said, we're going to go through the Sunwolves. We're also going to touch on a few news and notes since the last podcast. It's been a fairly quick turnaround. There's only been a couple of pre-season games, so there's not a hell of a lot going on. There's only a couple of key points for Fantasy Rugby Draft managers. A reminder about our Refer a Friend competition. If you invite a mate and he joins Fantasy Rugby Draft for the first time, then you go into the draw to win a Super Rugby jersey. What do you think, Rich? Which one would you go for? Would you be patriotic and go with the Wolves, or do you have your eye on something else?
The new Wolves jersey is pretty nice, especially the away jersey, the white one. So I think I might go for one of those.
I've always been a bit of a fan favourite of having a white as well, but you're not allowed to wear a white jersey in New Zealand. It's one of those unwritten rules that's beaten to you at boarding school. So we think it's a pretty good prize, the old Super Rugby jersey, so much so that Mossman asked me the other day whether he was allowed to enter the competition as well. So I gave him a swift no. You're on the payroll, so you can't necessarily join it. So he's a bit gutted about that. He's going to have to go get his own Haguara's jerseys. Just a bit of admin. So top 200 rankings are up on the site. We've now got the drafting blog up on the site from Coochie Town as well. It's a really good read. Pulls out some players in there. And we've only got 2 weekends left to draft. So in IT speak, get your ducks in a row, reach out and touch base with your mates. Create a league, fantasyrugbydraft.com. Let's crack into the Sunwolves, mate. I'm conscious of time. I know you've got to chat a little bit later with a couple of Sunwolves guys. Let's start from a kind of a holistic view of the Sunwolves this year versus last year. What are your thoughts?
It's a much bigger squad and a lot more depth. I mean, they just signed another player yesterday, actually, Kohei Asahori, who's a prop. So that takes the squad up to 51.
Wow.
Which is a big squad. The idea behind that is that whilst they tour South Africa and New Zealand, half the squad will remain in Japan with Jamie Joseph coaching them. So the idea this year, there is a huge link up between the Sunwolves and the Japan national team, which is one of the reasons why the players that have been picked, because all of them bar, I believe, one are eligible to play for Japan at some stage in the future.
Wow, okay. All right. That's quite a big change then, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so how long have they been in camp? Because I remember a bit of a fast last year, and as you said, it wasn't particularly any fault of the players or the coaches, but they had like a week of pre-season, didn't they, or something?
It's a little bit longer. They've been in camp now 10 days. Mm-hmm. They've got a warm-up game next weekend against the top league All-Star 15. And then they're right into it against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, pretty easy start for the Sunwolves.
Yeah.
And have you had much dealings with Philo? And what do you think, Philo Tiatia, the new coach, what do you think his approach is going to be? Is it similar to Hammer's?
I think so. I mean, obviously, the big advantage is Philo's had a long history with Japanese rugby. He was a player here with Toyota Verblitz. He coached with them as well. And then obviously he was Mark Hammett's assistant last year. So there is a continuation in that way of things, which is obviously a good thing for the players. He brings, his own way of doing things. I mean, it was interesting. I saw them do their first training session and there was about 3 cartons of eggs on the side of the field. Okay. And the Japanese journalist was just like, what on earth is going on? And they had absolutely no idea. And at the very end, Philo divided the players up into various teams, and they basically did the old catch and throw and catch an egg.
Yep.
And the players loved it. The journalists were absolutely shocked, and one of them asked Philo afterwards why, and Philo said, well, you've got to enjoy life. You've got to enjoy training. And so that's what I think he will bring to the side. There will be hopefully quite a bit of enjoyment out there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. I like that kind of approach because you can get your head stuck in the weeds a lot of the time when you're training, especially in pre-season. It can be a bit of a slog.
And especially for these guys that have just come straight off the top league season where they are training pretty hard and a lot of them have been used to the whole sort of the Japan system of 4-hour training sessions and whatever else. I think it's sort of a breath of fresh air for them and you know, they certainly there were some big smiles on the faces of all the players, you know, when they came off the training paddock.
Yeah, indeed. So do you think, last season, kind of, when you watch the Sunwolves play, they went in 20-minute spurts where they look world beaters. And then they dropped a little bit and maybe the defence lapsed a couple of times and they let in quite a bit of points. And one of the kind of weaknesses I think everyone kind of earmarked when they were playing the Sunwolves is that their type 5 wasn't as strong. There's a lot of experience in there, there's just not a lot of power. Have they addressed that this year, or are they going to go for a similar approach, which is that kind of fast pace and try and keep the ball moving?
I think, you know, you've got to try and have a mixture of the two. I mean, obviously when Japanese rugby works well, it's when it is fast paced. I mean, that's Japanese rugby. It's using the width, using the speed, quick ball. That's how they beat South Africa. It was quick channel ball at the scrums, get it out, and really run the opposition off their feet. Having said that, though, you do need a type 5 that can win you the ball. You know, obviously Japan did well at the World Cup. The Sunwolves didn't do quite so well. They brought in a new scrum coach. So we'll see. A lot of the same players there. There's a few extra players in the type 5. You know, it's a different type of type 5 because the front three in particular, they're not particularly tall. So what they will try and do is go in low and then drive upwards and cause some discomfort in the opposition there. But you're right. I mean, it's one area that they really do need to work on to ensure that, you know, the backs do get enough ball.
I almost feel as though if they could get parity or even just a little bit less, that, you know, they're going to pose some questions for a lot of teams. A lot of teams.
I think so. Yeah.
One of the, I guess, when you look at the fixtures, I mean, everyone knew this is the way that Sanzar built the fixture list with the conference system, that you play a different conference each year. So last year they had the South African. This year, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're looking on, they play the New Zealand conference. So I guess for yourself, Rich, it's going to be quite good because you get to see quite a few of those superstars coming up and playing up in there. But is it something that the Sunwolves have either looked at or addressed, or is that something we should be concerned of for a fantasy rugby manager, for instance, or factoring into?
I mean, publicly they'll say that they're only concerned about themselves. I mean, that's what all coaches always say anyway. They're only concentrating on what they're going to do. But I think, I mean, everyone knows that this year is probably going to be tougher, you know, playing the New Zealand sides, especially when you looked last year and saw what the New Zealand sides were doing. So, I mean, deep down, I think everyone knows that with the schedule that they've got this year, they've probably even got more travelling than they had last year. And then, as you say, taking on the New Zealand sides rather than the Australian sides, it is going to be a tougher season for the Sunwolves. But having said that, you know, they've learnt their lessons from last year, and so hopefully some of those lessons can be, you know, applied, and they won't struggle so much when they're on the road.
Yeah, that's true. 1 year in makes a big difference. That under the belt, a little bit of experience, know how to. Because a lot of them, I guess, have been in the Japan team from a setup perspective. But when you're touring, like day in, day out, and what is it? It's an 18-week season or something like 17-week season. It's a long time. It's a long time to be away from families and to get your structures right. So I think 1 year in, you lay the platform of what you do on off days, and I think it makes a big difference.
I think, I mean, a lot of the players have played for Japan. Obviously, even a lot of the new players, though, still wouldn't have experience going over to South Africa. It's a long, long way from Japan. You're obviously playing at altitude at some of the venues as well. But then there are players within the squad who have done that from last year. And as I say, you know, hopefully their experience and the experience of Philo Tier and the coaches will rub off on the new players.
Yep, cross fingers for that. So, I haven't actually checked this. It's a bit lazy on my behalf. Home ground this season, is it split?
It is split. 4 games in Tokyo and 3 games in Singapore, which, I mean, great for the people in Singapore. They'll get to see some good rugby. I just think that having just 4 games in Tokyo, it's hard to sort of really keep the momentum going and keep the fans interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. So how long's that? Do we know how long that deal was struck with Singapore? Was it struck with Sanzar or struck with?
It struck with Sanzar because the South African teams were basically complaining about the travel to Japan.
Sure.
So we'll see. I mean, I've heard different rumours about how long it's in place for. I mean, you just got to, you've been dealt it and you've got to get on with it. Great thing, are going to get to go to Singapore for 3 games, which is nice, but, and it does break up the journey slightly on the way to South Africa, but obviously, from a perspective of trying to build up a franchise and building up interest, I mean, the Sunwolves have 1 game in, February, and then the next home game is April, I think, as in terms of in Tokyo. So it's hard for the fans. Wow. And especially because a lot of the away games are going to be at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, and as you say, it's very hard to build momentum, get a fan just to kind of breed itself. It's stop-starty.
Yeah.
Let's get into a few kind of players, because there's been a little bit of change around at the Sunwolves. For fantasy rugby draft managers, we look at fly halves, outside backs, midfielders primarily. So, who is going to take over from Tusapisi?
Well, they've named on the squad. They've named 5, but I think in fact 4, because I think Tatakawa will probably end up playing inside centre.
Yep.
I would say the surprise choice, probably, I would say Hayden Cripps might start. Tamura's there, who's the Japan fly half. His younger brother's also in the squad. But Hayden Cripps has been playing some great rugby. He's been playing 2nd division rugby in Japan. So he came in under the radar, but from what I've heard from a couple of well-placed coaches is that he is a very, very talented player. So I have a feeling he might start.
Interesting. That's good intel. I don't think we had that on our radar, and certainly many of the managers did. So he was playing 2nd division. It sounds like a New Zealand name.
He is, yeah. I think. Was he from Northland? I'm not sure actually. I'm sorry. I say he's been over here a couple of years. Been playing for Tokyo Gas.
Okay. Cool. All right. No, that's pretty interesting. All right, we'll put that in the mix. Outside back. So. Yamada had a ripping season last season, a lot of tries. Who's going to be replacing him? So what was the story there actually? Is there a story there, or he just moved on?
No, his wife gave birth to twins in November, I believe. And I think he's just decided that it's time to spend a bit of time with the family. Interestingly enough, I mean, he's in Brisbane at the moment with Panasonic for the Brisbane Tens. He's then captaining the top league team next weekend against the Sunwolves. But then I think it's time he's going to probably just spend a bit of time at home with the twins and the wife, and then hopefully be rejuvenated for the June test matches.
Fair play.
So they picked 5 wingers, all interesting characters. Kenki Fukuoka, who played for Japan at the Olympics and at the World Cup last year, very quick winger. Kaki Nakazuru, who scored 17 tries in the top league and was the top league MVP. I think those 2 might start. They're both slightly small. On the other end of the scale, you've got Atata Moeakaiola, who scored 3 tries for Japan under-20s against South Africa at the World Under-20 Championships last year.
Okay.
He's over 100 kilos, a student over here, and as I say, he's the chalk and cheese to Nakazuru and Fukuoka.
Interesting. Okay, those are names that won't be household names, I imagine, for a lot of folks listening. So that's awesome. So we think it might be Fukuoka and Nagazura. Is that how I pronounce it, or have I completely butchered that?
Nakazuru and Fukuoka, I think probably. Although I say the other 2 players, Goto was a standout player for Japan at the Olympics as well. So he's a sevens player. So he's got a bit of gas.
Okay.
I would think early on in the season, Nakazuru and Fukuoka will probably be the ones.
So it's probably worth having a look at that All-Stars 15 lineup when that's named. Is that going to be fairly representative of what they're going in for? Is that just the one pre-season game that they're going to have?
The one pre-season game. So from what I've gathered, and that's what I was trying to confirm this afternoon, they've only named 15 players in this All-Star 15, and I would think the rest of that squad will be made up of Sunwolves, so you'll end up almost having against Sunwolves.
Okay. That could get interesting if you've got a spot against each other.
Yeah.
Interesting, I like it. Midfield, so last year's probably surprise packet for a lot of folks who aren't familiar with the Japanese setup was Derek Carpenter. He was really, really strong.
No, he played very, very well. I think early on in the season, I think they were picking him at 12, which I don't think is his position. I think he's much more of an outside centre. And once they sort of got that combination going with Tatakawa and Carpenter, I think it went very well. One other midfielder that I think could get quite a bit of playing time is Timothy Lafayette, who has been playing for Coca-Cola over here. He played for Japan in the November Test matches, and again, he's one of those players that, like Tatakawa and Tamura, can sort of fit in between 10 and 12.
Okay, all right. Interesting. So we think it's likely to be Tatakawa and Carpenter outside of him, if you had to put your house on it at this stage?
At this stage, I would say, yeah,
okay.
Those two.
Yeah, no, very impressive with Carpenter. Is that eyeshadow that he wears, or is that just a kind of deep, mysterious look that he's got?
Let's go with the latter.
He looked very swashbuckling.
I'll ask him if you want, but
yeah, that's right. Looks
I'll
very
be at a distance when I ask him.
Johnny Deppish a little bit, but yeah, very good. Fumi Tanaka come over. That's obviously really good for experience as well for the Sunwolves. It brings a lot of energy and a lot of kind of fast pace, which is exactly what the Sunwolves like to play. I assume he's going to slot in at 1, is he?
I would think he will for the home games. I have a feeling he'll be one of the players that might well be rested for the long overseas trips, because he's been playing a lot of rugby of late. And I know that one of the reasons that they've got such a large squad is that they are very conscious of player welfare. Okay. Bearing in mind that obviously in June Japan play Romania and then 2 test matches against Ireland, and then in November they play Australia, France and 2 other test matches. There's a lot of rugby because the top league finished the end of January. They've gone basically straight into Super Rugby. That finishes second, third week in July. Top league starts August the 18th. Yeah. So there's not a lot of rest for these guys. And I think Jamie Joseph, who basically is overseeing the whole of Japanese rugby, including the Sunwolves, he sat down with Filo Tiatia, and I think, as I say, one of the reasons for this huge squad is that some of the more senior players are probably going to be rested for some of the trips.
Interesting. That's a really good point to note if you're looking at drafting some of these big name Sunwolves players. That if they're associated with the Japan national, then it's got an exterior factor to look into. Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so one of the things I kind of thought off the top of my head when I heard that Filo Tiatia was the coach, well, he was named as coach, he's going to love having Andrew Duratalo there, because they just look pretty much the exact same way that they used to play. It was very, very abrasive, big chap, good offload, very similar to what Tiatia was like as a player as well, but Duratalo's not there anymore, right?
No, he's not. No. So, in the back row is a lot of new faces. I mean, obviously Ed Quirk is back. He's a co-captain, so I would expect him to be getting a lot of playing time, as he did last year. Mm-hmm. They brought in Willie Britz, who used to play for the Cheetahs, and he's been playing over here for NTT Communications. And then a lot of the other back rows, I mean, you've got a lot of fairly small but very quick and agile number 7s. There's a guy called Shohei Kin, who there was a video that was up last year of Japan's try against Scotland, the length of the field try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. It's awesome.
Shohei Kin was very involved in that, so he's a very mobile number 7. Shunsuke Nunamaki, who has come into the Japan national team, is in a very similar sort of vein. And then in the number 8, you've got guys like Shuhei Matsuhashi, who again isn't the biggest number 8, but is a very mobile and agile number 8 forward. So it's a different makeup of back row forwards, I think.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and that's what we like to hear from a fantasy rugby draft perspective as well, is that kind of Shohei Kin being a bit looser, being a bit more of a link man almost, as opposed to being tight. We like that.
Yeah.
One to watch. Probably just to wrap up the Sunwolves, last year The first game, I think it terrified and excited everyone at the same time when the first scrum packed down and that howl went round the crowd. That was incredible. Is that something that they just came up with on the spot, or is this something that's been around for a while? Or
No, and it actually surprised all of us. It was actually interesting because after the first game, I sort of, once I'd finished all my work, decided I better, go and talk to the fans over a beer.
Yep.
And, as you do. Mm-hmm. And, it was interesting because some of them were complaining because some of the old, how should we say, the fuddy-duddies in the Blazers were complaining at the noise during the game because, not the done thing at university rugby, gotta keep quiet.
Absolutely.
As the season went on, the howl got louder and louder, and then eventually, because it wasn't pre-planned, eventually at the end of the season, it was actually up on the big screen whenever there was the howl or whatever, and it was great. I mean, from someone that's been watching Japanese rugby for so long and been in sort of some pretty quiet stadiums, to have that fan base and have those fans so into their team was just brilliant. It was great.
It was awesome. It came through the mic, came through the TV. You just felt that they started to kind of own that team a little bit as well with the howl. It's it's like the Viking clap, wasn't it, for the Iceland football team? It's like the Sunwolves howl. That's probably enough for the Sunwolves, I guess, mate. So is there anyone that you wanted to kind of pull out that you think may be good to keep an eye on for fantasy rugby draft managers that we haven't already talked about?
If I was to say one player, I would say keep an eye out for Sam Wicks, who's to play for the Western Force.
Yep.
Again, he's been over here a few years now playing at Coca-Cola. And I just have a feeling that looking at some of the other second rows, Hitoshi Ono's getting on, so he's going to be rested. The Akimoli had a good season last year. Shinya Makabe's a good player, but does struggle with injury slightly. And I just have a feeling Sam Wicks might be a player who gets quite a bit of playing time.
Okay. Yeah, he was decent for the Force, wasn't he? He
was
okay. Good worker. Big boy.
Yep, big boy. And he's mobile as well. And as I say, that sort of plays into that whole Sunwolves strategy of trying to play a quick game with ball handling forwards.
Shift the contact. I like it. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. No, thanks for your time, Rich. That's it's awesome. Genuinely added a hell of a lot of information in that short time that we've just had. And can I just say, from a personal level as well, it's great to hear you on the sideline for the Sunwolves games, adding a little bit of sanity and adding a little bit of actual insight on the sideline is something something rare. Very much appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Good man.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Okay, let's get into a few player news.
Fantasy Rugby Draft Update.
So there's not a hell of a lot coming through at the moment, since our last podcast at least. So the Bulls played the Chiefs and they turned them over quite handily. The Chiefs weren't necessarily at full strength though, but the interesting point to take out of this is that Creel was at 15. Hallant did score at the end, but a big asterisk must be around Hallant now and how high you want to draft him, with Creel sitting there in that first preseason game at 15, and I heard Nolis, which is probably again a butchering of his name, say that he wanted Creel at 15 during the season as well. I'm not sure if that's just a light of fire or I don't know where that is, but there's a lot of doubt over that 15 position. We need to see a little bit more, but just take that into your draft and be aware that if you're drafting Hallant, it comes with risk. Good news for Patrick Turbolotu fans. His B sample came back clear, which is great for Petty. So he'll be one of the more prominent locks in our game. He's a great ball carrier. Blues going a little bit better this season as well. Just kind of wait for the next couple of weeks, I think, just to see how he turns up in training and see how he gets into that Blues squad and assimilates back in, shall we say. Great news for accountants all round. Ben from Accounts re-signed. Fabulous news for New Zealand. Fabulous news for Highlanders fans. Fabulous news for Fantasy Rugby Draft fans as well. So really good news. Not much to say for there. As supposed to say he's going to be there for a little bit longer. John O'Macaulay didn't travel to the Tens. I believe he was intended to. I think he's still battling a little bit with that leg injury. So let's see in the next preseason game. See next weekend, just see if he gets a bit of a run out there. But keep a watching brief on that. Jump into our Hall of Fame group again. We keep stressing this, but a lot of folks are getting great value out of it. There's a couple of mock drafts that have been this week, or at least in the last couple of days as well. It's really great to test live fire, but we try and put lots of bits and pieces on there as well in terms of different articles and different preseason lineups. And there's a lot of guys trawling for information there, and it's great that it's not in front of your own. A lot of the time, it's not trawling information from the same league that you're in. So jump on there and post away. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. That's Fantasy RUG Draft. Or drop us a mail on support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. I wanted to keep this one really brief, so I won't get into. There's a couple of ways that folks that we've been sent in by Chris Marshall and Justin Pivas about how they are selecting their draft order for the season. It's very, very clever. And if you haven't spotted it, I'll get into that in probably the next podcast. If you haven't spotted on our social as well, it might be one of the how do I put it? The harshest punishments that we've ever seen. For coming last place in your Fantasy Rugby Draft League. Go check it out. Open mic night just terrifies the hell out of me as well. Fair play for coming up with that. But we want to kind of stress that that's the little wrinkles that you can have in your league to add that little bit of spice, that little bit of extra. If you have a look close enough on the photos that we've got on Twitter and Facebook, the people in the front row have got their head in their hands as well. So he's clearly bringing the house down. But go and check that out as well. Very, very, very amusing. So thanks for sending that through, actually, Nick Wilkinson. Really appreciate it. That's about all the time we have for today. I'm Bruce Wilkinson of the Duratalo.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a dummy!